Hello and welcome to Light from Light. I'm joined by an old friend. We were just talking just before we started recording. One of the things Andrew said was he was a few years ahead of me in school. So yeah, I'll keep reminding him just how old he is.
The lighting's doing well for me. You can't see the grey hairs in my beard, at least I don't think.
The lighting is doing well for you. The shadows, he means the shadows, the lack of light. Anyway, anybody who's listened to the audio version of the podcast, now we're pretty much exclusively on YouTube, I think. But the audio version of the podcast, Andrew was on a version of that, which I think was called Miracles Still Happen. Is that right? Was that the episode you were on?
I think you called it Andrew.
Okay. I just called it Andrew.
You definitely said something like converted by service or something along those lines.
Okay.
Transformed by service, I think.
Yeah, transformed by service. I think that was right. Yeah. And we're pretty much going to talk about the same thing pretty much in this episode, more or less, really, isn't it? It's just for YouTube. Rather than the audio thing. So yeah, Andrew was a few years ahead of me at school. We both met on pilgrimage with Shrewsbury. When was it?
I think it was 2005 or 2006.
Okay, yeah, you got a really good memory.
20 years, that must be. Well, it is, because it's 2025.
Wow, yeah. Gosh, yeah, it feels longer.
A lot.
I said that about. I was talking to Giovanni. I just recorded with brother Giovanni Castellano, who you've met as well. And apparently we've only known each other 4 years, but that definitely does feel longer. I feel like I've known him a very long time. But yeah, anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about Lourdes and the opportunities for service and things at the Shrine of Lourdes. We won't talk too much about the story of Lourdes because I think me and Dan have another episode about St. Bernadette and talking about Lourdes. But essentially, Our Lady appeared 18 times at the grotto in Lourdes. And as part of that, she asked for people to come on procession there for a church to be built, and she told Bernadette to dig, didn't she, in the cave?
She did, yes. She asked her to dig in the spot where the spring appeared. At the time, there was a crowd.
We should probably say that the spring appeared because she dug, right?
Yes. That's certainly what.
She started digging, and it just happened to be where the spring appeared years later.
Yes. It wasn't that she was told to dig and then it was completely irrelevant of what was going on that the spring just appeared. I should say there was a crowd gathered at the time because news had obviously got around about these apparitions and people were very much curious to see it for themselves. It turns out that Bernadette at the time was the one that was seeing these apparitions, and so I think because of that it led to a lot of people to have a lot of skepticism even when they were there about what was going on.
Why was it that some people started to believe? There were some people who believed on the evidence of Bernadette because they knew her character, right? But then there were other people who came to believe who weren't so sure at the beginning.
The tipping point for an awful lot of it was when Our Lady had, at this point, by the way, hadn't said to Bernadette who she was. And when she finally did give some sort of identification, she said to her, "I am the Immaculate Conception." And at that moment, that was when Bernadette, who had no concept of what that meant, indeed, many people in the church at the time didn't accept the hierarchy, whether it be the Holy Father or the cardinals. It was very much only those in Rome that knew what this was, or had this idea at least. She ran to.
That's not. Yeah, that's not. It's not quite true. You're right in that. Trickling down to somebody, for example, of Bernadette's education. Bernadette famously really struggled to get to catechism classes and things like that, and she was always told next year. But certainly, I think the priests would have known about the extraordinary.
Certainly, yes, absolutely.
Declaration in 1854.
Sorry, yes, this is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
So when she knew, when she was told this name, she ran to Father Paramal, who was the parish priest of the area, and told him what she'd heard. And it was at that moment that he then suddenly started to believe her, because even he didn't believe what she was saying at the time. So once she'd said, the lady has said she is the Immaculate Conception, that was what started to get the ball rolling for people to start to take her a little bit more seriously. So
Mm.
yes, you're right. Sorry, Father Paramal, at his level, even indeed would have known what this concept was, but laity certainly wouldn't have understood this concept in her region at the time, and the way the communication was unlike today. So yeah, that's essentially how people started to begin to believe her, because
Yeah,
there was some credibility from the clergy at least.
yeah. Even before that though, like with the spring, it's really early on that the first miracle happens,
Yeah.
isn't it? And this is one of the reasons why people still go to Lourdes now, right? I mean, people will go there searching for a miracle, but there are many different reasons why people go to Lourdes. Why did you start to go to Lourdes at the beginning?
In the very beginning, I started to go because I was told to. Um,
Okay.
and the thing is, that might
It was
sound
your mum, right? Yeah.
no, actually, it was my religious education teacher, Mr. Brian Lally. Um,
Oh,
Mr. Brian Lally, if you're
okay.
watching, thank you very much. Um,
Can you imagine oh, that'd be so funny.
hopefully he is. We'll try and send it to him if not. But
Are you still in touch with him?
no, 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 no. I would have lost
Okay.
touch with him for a long time, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there are ways and means of getting things out. So yeah, he told me to come along because the school group, our school, I should say, had a group that was attached to the HCPT group back in, gosh, this was 2004, and I went along there because it was something that I was told to do, and so I thought I'll go along, and from there, I uh, just fell in love with the place, really. What I discovered my first time, I very distinctly remember, is that there was a sense of safety that I felt walking around Lords, even at
Mm.
you'd be walking around at like for legitimate reasons, I should say. You might be walking around at 2 a.m. and
Yeah, no, it's true.
you might find that you're entirely comfortable, and that's very odd to have in any city, I would argue, especially one.
How old were you then? You were still in school,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I would have been 16, 17 then. I think closer to
okay.
17.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, I don't really, I mean, I still don't now, but I didn't really ever go out anyway, ever. And so to walk around the town there was a
He
sense.
means going out drinking, by the way. There are lots of bars and lots. I mean, he did leave the house when he was like,
Yes,
he
I
wasn't,
wasn't locked away.
working in the hospital non-stop, in Lords.
But the truth is, and I mean this seriously, that there was a very strong social connection that people find with Lords. They make friends for
Yeah,
life by going there. It isn't necessarily that you'll go there for a religious reason. It might well be that then grows within you later on,
yeah.
and I can certainly admit to that myself. And that's been, that's influenced an awful lot, really, for the better. So yeah, you do tend to find that you will make friends immediately if you go, just because, as I've been told, as if you're told to go, and stuff. But I continued to go with various groups, because you tend to find that once you've freely given yourself in service to someone else, and you start to get a flavour for acts of charity that perhaps you wouldn't be used to giving at home, it allows you to, it's liberating. It's so liberating in a way that you wouldn't ordinarily feel, And it's by doing that it's almost like it's a feeling that you want to get more of, and you want to do it in different ways and get that experience again and again. So that's why people go back. Certainly from my perspective, other people go back on pilgrimage, perhaps for a sense of camaraderie with other people. I've known people that are of no religious persuasion that go to Lourdes because they recognise it as a very special place, and I think that's because they recognise that you can see the best of humanity in Lourdes. From various people that you would never meet ever would can grant you such acts of kindness freely, and it's not something that you'd easily experience perhaps at home. So it's something that I would argue should be a good advertisement for going.
Yeah. I mean, I that's That really resonates with my own experience as well. You know, when I first went to Lourdes, I very much was religious. And I can't say that I was particularly excited about going the first time that I went. It was my grandmother who really was like, oh, you're going to go. And then I found out that I was sharing a room with somebody who I didn't know. And I was going to be with this youth group. And I thought, oh, God, you know, I find youth groups really patronizing. And, you know, I'm not going to be with anybody who I know. And actually, to be honest, most of the group, I mean, they were a couple of years older than me. I was just going into sixth form. Some of them were about to go to university. And in that 2 years, actually, it's quite a different frame of mind that you're in, you know? So they weren't particularly kind to me or anything. I mean, the fact that Our Lady appeared there was really important to me. And I think for younger generations now going, I think that is becoming more and more of an important reason why people go even amongst the young. Because you're right. I mean, for a lot of people who weren't religious, they'd go. Why? Because like the sick are at the center of everything that happens there. I mean, of course, God is at the center, the Blessed Mother is at the center. But in terms of your practical day to day work, if you're going there to volunteer, it's the sick that's in the forefront of their mind. Now, of course, for a religious person, they also see Christ present in the sick, and they're doing this, yes, because they love this individual, but also because they really love God and they really love, you know, the Blessed Mother, and they want to love God and love their neighbor, honor the Blessed Mother, and all the rest of it, right? But you're right, lots of people who go who aren't religious precisely because they want to help other people and help the sick, and it's changed them in some way, you know?
And it's also not just I mean what tends to happen is that if you are there in service to somebody, regardless of what it is that they need help with, if it's maneuverability, being able to access things, what you tend to find is that any service that you give to them, their gratitude is given to you in return and it's so fulfilling. Like I can't there's a description to this that I sort of can't describe. It's it's so addictive that you want to experience that again. I think I've explained this before where I've said, you know, sometimes people feel so vulnerable giving something as little as their time to people that back home that perhaps need more assistance with things. Like if you see somebody who perhaps is homeless in the street back home, you tend to, or I say you tend to, but I mean, generally, I'd argue that people tend to ignore them. I'll give you an example. People, when I'm driving through some city centres these days, people have resorted to doing something that I only saw in Rome a long time ago, where people are at traffic lights trying to get attention to, you know, to whether it be for money or for whatever. The point is that they're desperate for attention because no one gives it to them. And in Lourdes, you tend to give that attention so freely. And like I say, the gratitude that you get for giving just a little bit of your time is immeasurable. You know, it's a beautiful place to go to experience that. And like I say, once you've done it once, you'll like me, I suppose, like many others, like including yourself, you want to go back and experience it again.
Mm.
Um,
You experience the goodness of other people, and something that you said earlier about how you encounter people who otherwise you might not necessarily meet, you know? I think about some of the more severely disabled pilgrims, you know, some people who perhaps not only can they not walk, but they can't speak. Sometimes they may be also blind or deaf or all of the above, you know? And, you know, they often try to make you laugh, and they can experience love, you know? And especially because they don't encounter many people who are interested especially in them and want to get to know them, you know? There can be in society an aversion to people who are suffering. You know, somebody's bereaved, somebody is suffering because they're ill, and all of a sudden their world can shrink. And there can be people who, because they feel discomforted by somebody else's discomfort, they don't know how to deal with that. But actually, Lourdes is that sort of school whereby you learn that actually, because just because somebody is suffering, it doesn't mean that, you know, they don't have worth or dignity or value. It doesn't mean that their life is not worth living just because they have hardships. And actually, they're capable of experiencing the most important reality for us as human beings, which is the love, the compassion, the kindness, and the care, yes, of God, and also of their neighbor. And you can be an instrument of God's love for them. And they are very, well, always actually, from my experience, an instrument of God's love towards you, because through them, you will learn how to be more authentically human. You will learn how to be more humane, to be more compassionate, to be um, also patient. Also, you'll learn a lot about humility, right? It's a very humbling experience to let somebody wash you and take care of your personal care as you might be asked to do if you work in the hospital. But it's also teaches you something about humility in that if you're asked to do something like that, you have to go beyond what you feel comfortable with sometimes in order actually to meet somebody's need.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was the thing that changed for me once I was asked to go and work in the baths. The first time I was asked to go in through the diocese, but it was what allowed me to discover the hospitality Notre Dame de Lourdes, which we might talk about briefly in a moment. Um, I I yeah, I'd been asked to go and work in the baths, where the very water from the spring is now sent through to. And at that point, I should say I had no experience of going inside. I'd had plenty of opportunity to go inside, but I never felt that I could. And this is part of the theme, really, of me being told what to do. Go and do this, and I went and did it. So indeed, whether it be to go to Lourdes literally, or even what to do in Lourdes itself. And when I was in the baths, I must admit, like there was no ability of me being able to to speak Italian. I was with a group of Italians who couldn't speak a word of English, but the experience, like I say, that I had, it was so humbling to be there to help people to access the water, to bathe in it, and to look after them in their most vulnerable state.
It's a very vulnerable thing, isn't it, going
Yeah.
to the baths? Because so we should probably say the baths are filled with water that came from the spring that Bernadette dug at Our Lady's instruction. And you saying before about, I was told that, Our Lady tells us, go and wash, isn't it? Is it lave, something like that? Go and
Something like that.
bathe or wash in the waters. And one of the reasons, of course, why people are keen to go to the baths is because sometimes miracles happen there. Miracles still do happen, and there have been a few that have been declared in the past 5 years or so, even. Um, and yeah, but it's a very vulnerable place because when you go in, you you take all your clothes off and you just have a towel wrapped around you, right? So yeah, and then when you go into the baths, then what happens?
So you go inside. Well, there's two things that happen at the moment. The old version used to be with a full immersion. I'll perhaps describe that first.
Yeah, reminds us of our baptism,
Yes.
and
So what?
yeah, this is
So
particularly a vulnerable moment, right?
yeah,
And it
it's a very
allows
intimate
people
moment as
to,
well,
yeah,
because what would happen is you would go in, as you say, you would wait, firstly. Um, I can speak only for the men's, of course. You would be in a state, you would get undressed within the first cubicle. And I should say, as I'm saying this, it is always dignified. There's no, you are there to protect people's dignity. It's not, there's no exposure of anything that would cause
yeah,
any sort of alarm.
yeah,
Once you go through the second curtain, if you like, into where the bath is, that's where you would undress properly, and a towel would be then wrapped around you to make sure, as I say, to preserve all your dignity
yeah.
and everything.
The towel is actually held up around you as
Yes,
you're changing, right? So nobody can see anything.
exactly, exactly.
And then you take the towel and you wrap it around yourself, huh?
Indeed, indeed. And well, yeah, it would be around in the men's, it'd be around your waist, and there'd be people there
Okay,
to
yeah,
make sure that that's all solidly in place and everything else. But we would, at that point, you would stand at the foot of the baths. You would say your prayer to Our Lady, perhaps then offer up your own intentions before being walked down into the bath. It's about 2 or 3 steps. You would then walk to the end of the bath. And then you'd have two people either side of you who would have hold of your wrists. They would then sort of tilt you backwards. You would sit down as if you're in a chair, and they would tilt you backwards, holding onto underneath you as well as onto your wrist here. and then would bring you back up again. And it's, as you say, it's there to symbolize almost like a rebirth and to remind you of your baptism.
And the water's cold, you know.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
not a comfortable experience. You're stripping off, you're going into, this cold water. There are other people there. It's a very vulnerable moment. And I think in this society that we live in, that's all about appearances and strength and power and all the rest of it, it really helps you to imitate, our Lord, who himself was so humble that he accepted death, even death on a cross, and being able to do that, all of those walls and barriers and things that you've built up, which keep you in a particular way of being, in a way of thinking, all of those things can come down. I remember you telling me before about how sometimes after being in the baths, something will be brought to somebody's mind, and they'll have this sudden desire to go to confession, right? Did you
Yeah,
say that?
so again, Lourdes tends to open up, well, it allows you to encounter something for yourself, and it can trigger a response that makes you feel that you need to then reconcile yourself,
Yeah.
And the baths are a brilliant example of this. It's not so much just the baths themselves, I should say. All throughout the whole time that you're there and you're praying essentially before you go in, it could take an awfully long time before you get inside the baths. And what's happening constantly outside on the plateau is praying the rosary. So you're in this constant state of meditative prayer that once you go into the baths, you've waited for such a long time that when you're ready, you're in a right state of consciousness to be able to then essentially, if you confess any sins that you feel that you need to. And so immediately after, what's happened in the past is that many people have gone into the baths, experienced it, and then come out visibly upset, crying, all of the emotions you can imagine. It's at that particular moment that we will say, right, now is your moment to go to confession. And the confessionals of in the chapel of
They're
reconciliation
not far away. It's like a
it's
5 minutes, is it?
5 minute walk. It's in literally a straight line, straight to
Yeah.
from the grotto, past the grotto, sorry, to
Yeah.
the first building, and it's there ready for you to as I say, to make right with it. With
And their confessions almost all day. I think they have a break for lunch and they stop in the evening. I think they start around 9, half 8, 9, something like that, maybe.
different languages start at different times, but
Yeah.
they definitely cover enough of the day
Yeah.
for it to coincide with everything else.
Yeah.
So it's always available for you is the thing, and that's one of the great things about Lourdes is that you come back home and you might find that certain sacramentals or certain things that are only available at certain times in your local parish. In Lourdes, it's available all the time, and it's great because it's just to say that God is readily available to listen to you and be there for you when you're ready.
Hmm.
So there's plenty to be said about the the timings at the very least. So yeah, that does happen. People go to reconciliation very very quickly after they've been in the baths.
So we've got roughly about 5 minutes left or so of the episode. I'm keeping tabs, Dan. Um, Maybe you could say a little bit about, because there's this place called the Bureau of Miracles, right? So what's the Bureau of Miracles? And maybe you could describe a little bit. I mean, we call it the Court of Miracles because of
Because of the Hunchback of Notre
the
Dame.
Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the literal translation of this is the Museum of Miracles.
Okay, not the Bureau of Miracles.
Aha.
Okay.
There is the medical bureau that's attached
Right.
to it. So this is the place where it's essentially set out like a museum, and it's got all of the 71 miracles now lined up across this hall. Pictures provided if they were lucky enough to have them at the time, and they describe each miracle that's been recognised in Lourdes. Some of these miracles can carry with them some level of evidence. I mentioned before the man back from the 19th century who had his leg broken, I think, by a tree, and it was an incurable break at the time. There was no way they were going to cure that, and they've got a cast of his bones and where the break was, and he was praying by a replica grotto, and was cured. And that's a miracle that's been recognised. The 70th miracle, second to the most recent. I'll explain a little bit about the most recent in a moment, but Sister Bernadette's. She was the most modern one to date, where she suffered from excruciating spinal pain and leg
She
issues.
had like a whole cast for like her whole body, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She
And
had
you can see like the remote, like there was like a remote that would like help her to move and things.
Yeah, so she suffered from she was on things like morphine and stuff like that to cope with the pain. I'm not sure what the disease was that she suffered from, but I know that yeah, you're right. She had all these different braces to allow her to hold herself upright and stuff like that, so she wasn't having to rely on her own muscular ability. Really, I think because the pain was so much, it probably sent an awful lot of discomfort for different reasons. But yeah, so she I can't remember whether or not she was present in Lourdes herself, or whether she was watching. I think she was definitely she was either watching the Blessed Sacrament procession at home or she was either present at the Blessed Sacrament procession, and she experienced the well, she experienced her healing then, and she mentions this sensation of warmth.
That happens a lot. I read about one of the in the museum. One of the miracles was somebody, I think it was a lady in the baths, and she says like her friends told her that the water was really cold, and when she came out, she said, "Oh, trying to wind me up, tell me the water was cold."
Yeah.
And they said, "But it was. It's freezing."
Hmm.
And she said, "No, it wasn't. The water was warm."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she, like later on, she realizes actually that her condition has gone away. She submits it to the medical bureau in Lourdes. They investigate. These things get investigated for years. Maybe you could say a little bit about who investigates them.
Okay, so the Medical Bureau of Lourdes are
Are they doctors? Are
they're
they all
all
religious people? Are they all Catholics?
so
Looking for a miracle under every stone, or
so they are all doctors, or have a like
medical doctors?
a medical background certainly. They're not all Catholic or indeed Christian. Some of them are atheists, and their entire role is to disprove that a miracle has taken place.
Well, find a naturalistic explanation.
Yeah, I mean they essentially play devil's advocate is the
Yeah.
thing. They try to find, as you say, a medical and scientific reason to prove how something has happened, and only when they cannot come up with an answer is when they would then submit
Mm.
that a miracle may have taken place, and that's when it gets, if you like, it almost gets the royal assent, as we would say in
Mm.
the UK, and sent to Rome to be
Well,
confirmed.
it's my understanding that they don't actually declare anything to be a miracle themselves, right? They see
Medical
that as the
bureau, you
job of the
mean?
church. Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. That's what I mean.
yeah.
So it gets
The
sent
medical
to.
bureau look for a naturalistic explanation,
Uh-huh.
and this means that very often, they're studying the case, in some cases 15, 20 years, and they look at it really, really thoroughly. For something to be declared a miracle by the church, it has to be instantaneous, it has to be lasting. Doctors don't really like talking about cures anymore. They prefer to say somebody's in remission, right?
Yes.
So so sometimes these things can take a long time, and people pull out the process because they think I'm just grateful to
Uh,
be
uh,
well again.
uh.
I don't care if you recognize me as a miracle or not. Um, but they will search things, and they will get a specialist in that field. So if it's something to do with a particular type of cancer, then they will get somebody who's a specialist in that particular type of cancer, as well as other doctors. And the bureau then all vote as to whether they think that this can be explained by modern science or not. And so then they vote on it. And there are things which they say, are inexplicable. And only then do they then hand over the file to the diocese, who then conduct a separate investigation, right? And there are like 7 or 8 criteria. I think that there are multiple criteria that have to be met.
There are. I couldn't tell you what they are.
I know for a Lord's miracle, for a miracle to be associated as like one of the Lord's miracles, it has to have some connection with Lourdes. Either you're praying to Our Lady of Lourdes, or you were there, or whatever it may be, but it needs
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah, yeah.
connection to Lords. It has to be instantaneous. So it has to be instantaneous. It has to be total and a complete healing, not a partial healing. So let's say you're blind. You can't, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Let's say you had a cancerous tumor. It can't just be that it shrunk a bit, it's got to go, got to be gone.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it would be an odd experience, wouldn't it? To
yeah,
instead you've experienced a miracle that was only half done.
yeah. Well, I mean, it may be, you know, uh, the fact that somebody's very aggressive cancer slowed down and gave somebody a chance to, you know, put their affairs in order and say goodbye to their family and, to have their final confession and things like that. That is a beautiful act of grace. It's not, the church has such a high bar for what she would consider to be a miracle. And the criteria have been in place for a long time now. Like, I think, is it 16 or 1700, something like that? 17th century, maybe 1600. I think so. Yeah. It's a very high bar. It has to be a total healing, not a partial healing. It has to be medical professionals have to have investigated it and say that it's not explainable by medical science. Uh, Instantaneous. There are all sorts of other criterias and things. So yeah, it's remarkable. But I realize that we're now 35 minutes and I can hear Dan in my head saying, stop, stop. The editing, think of the editing. Maybe you could just explain very briefly, because you're part of an organization called the Hospitalité Notre Dame de Lourdes,
That's
right?
correct. That's it.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. I've been a hospitality with them now since 2019. A stagiaire with them since 2014. So
So
I've been
this
with them.
this is essentially a way for people to volunteer and help with the running of the sanctuary,
Yeah,
help with the sick
it
pilgrims.
is.
Yeah.
It is. There are many different services that you can be a part of. There's something for everyone. The best way to find a way of finding what's right for yourself and getting in touch with them is through their websites, which I'm
I'll link it in
hoping.
the show notes.
Yeah, put that in the show notes. Don't quiz me on what that actually is accurately now, but I'll send you a copy and paste URL later. But yeah, there's plenty there. There's plenty of opportunity and different services for people to do and get involved with. And I would say quite fervently right now, yes, we need as many volunteers as possible. And it is an international organization. You don't need to speak very good French to be able to get by. They will take anyone who is willing to, as I have been all my life, do as they're told.
And they also need medics to join the medical bureau as well.
Yes, they do.
So if you're in the medical profession, you can be part of this medical bureau that looks into these miracles and helps the sick, in that way. So you can join the medical bureau. Again, you don't have to be Catholic to be able to join this. To join the medical bureau, you just need to be a medic. So yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I should probably say, maybe just as a note to finish on, oh, look, he's getting bashful because he knows what's coming. One of the other really wonderful things about Lourdes is that Andrew has met his spouse to be. So maybe you could just very briefly say something about that.
Sure. So we met 2 years ago after Mass in St. Joseph's Chapel.
In Lourdes, right?
In Lourdes, yes, of
Yeah.
course, in Lourdes.
And you were both doing the same sort of service, but you weren't on the
I
same
think
team.
we do the same sort of service,
Yeah.
but I don't think she was necessarily doing it at the time. She was there with their diocese.
Okay. Yeah.
But we met up. I invited her out for a drink, which I should say, blew me off on the first on the first occasion. But
And who could blame her?
I know, indeed. It turns out that the night that she found that she was out on her own one night because all of her friends had gone back home, and she thought, I wonder if he's still out here. I'll text him and see what the situation is. And 2 years later, we're now engaged. So
You're now engaged.
yeah. Hopefully,
Congratulations.
the plan is to get married next July, 2026. So yeah.
And you also proposed in Lourdes, right?
I did. It's a place that means a lot to both of us. So
And you're going to get married in a church that just happens to be dedicated to Our Lady of
Our
Lourdes.
Lady of Lourdes, yes, absolutely.
Don't you love it when a plan comes together?
It's very much a theme of our wedding at the moment. I must say, I imagine it, given where we met, it will be the theme of our of our marriage, really.
A lot of the priests who will be there will, of course, be people who you've met at Lourdes. A lot of the friends will be people who you've met at Lourdes.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
At the
Our
moment, we
Lady who
have
was present at Cana is, matchmaking
absolutely.
all this time
We,
later,
we have, I think, about 7 priests and 2 deacons at least that should be hopefully in attendance on the sanctuary. So you'll be in good company, Father Tom.
Wonderful. I look forward to it. I can't wait. Okay, so we should wrap up this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, I was about to say night night, God bless, but you might be watching this in the daytime, probably. Okay, God bless.